Okay, so here we are in test 2 of the McGraw-Hill 10 ACT exams, and this time we're going to run it with a timer and see how we do time-wise. Okay, so we'll start with question 1. In the standard xy coordinate plane, point x has coordinates -4, 0, and y has coordinates 0, -8. What are the coordinates of the midpoint? So the midpoint is simply the average of the x's and the average of the y's. Okay, so we have to take the average of -4 with 0. So -4 combined with 0 divided by 2 is equal to -2. That's the x coordinate, and so we must be at choice B. Given right triangle below, how many units long is NO? So this is a multiple of a 3, 4, 5. If you double each one, you get 6, 8, 10, and the missing number here is 8. So that would be choice K. A distance in meters m can be approximated by multiplying a distance in yards y by 1.06. So m is approximately equal to y times 1.0936. That looks like choice C. Seth has 4 plaid shirts, 5 solid shirts. In his haste to get ready, he grabs one of these 9 shirts. What is the probability that it is plaid? So probability is success over total. So the number of total shirts is 9, and success is constituted by plaid, and the number of plaid shirts is 4. So 4/9, choice H. The daily total of enrollments at Sunnyside Summer Camp last month through Saturday were this. What is the average? So the average formula is sum over number. So we have to add those up and divide by, looks like 6, right? So let me just get the calculator ready. Okay, here we go. So alright, so we've got 17. We got 17 plus 19 plus 23 plus 14 plus 25 plus 28. That equals, divided by 6 is 21. So you'll notice that I made sure to make it equals before I divided, because if you just divide without parentheses, you'll get the wrong answer. In the figure below, line L is parallel to M. Which of the following angles must be congruent to Y? So they're setting up parallel lines cut by a transversal. So they're going to go for alternate interior, it looks like. So 4 and y would be equal, right? A carton of paper is priced at $27 now. If the paper goes on sale for 25% off, what will be the price? So 25% off is really 75% on, which corresponds to a multiplier of 0.75. So we take the current price, multiply it by the multiplier, that'll give us the final price. So 27 times 0.75 is $20.25. Okay. What is the slope of any line parallel to the line this? Okay. So what we'd like to do here is get this into y equals form. So one way to do that is to swing this 3y to this side, making it positive 3y, and then minus the 7 to this side, making it 2x minus 7. Then finally we divide by 3 on each and every item, and we end up with 2/3 as our slope. Okay. Any line parallel, of course, would have the same slope because they have to be pitched at the same angle. Andrew won a cash prize on a game show. Andrew paid taxes of 30% on the original cash prize and had $28,000 remaining. How much was the original cash prize? Okay, so 30% tax rate, and the original price. Oh, okay. So let's see. All right, so we have to decide if this is a 30% increase or a 30% decrease. So normally when we are paying out taxes, it's an increase, right? Because we have the original amount and then we add the taxes to see the total outlay. In this case, it's kind of the opposite, where we won a certain amount of money, but then we only getting 70% of it, right? So 70% on is what we're receiving, and that's really 0.7 of the original. So 0.7 times the original is equal to 28,000. So then we simply have to divide by that multiplier, and that'll give us the value of the prize, which was 40,000. Melissa had 3 fewer apples than Marcia. So let's use C for Marcia. 3 fewer than Marcia would be Marcia minus 3. Then she, meaning Melissa, gave 2 apples to Marcia. So now Melissa's count is subtracted by 2, and Marcia's count is added by 2. Now how many fewer apples does Melissa have than Marcia? So originally the difference was equal to 3, but you added 2 to one hand, subtracted 2 from the other, so that's a net difference of 4 that's tacked on to that net difference that was currently at 3. So now the net difference is 7. And if that was hard to keep track of, you can also do it with numbers. So you can say that, let's say, well, if Melissa had 3 fewer, maybe she had 7 and maybe she had 10, right? And now Melissa lost 2, so now she has 5, and Marcia gained 2, now she has 12, so you could see that their difference would be 7. What is the value of 5 minus a absolute value if a equals 9? So we're going to plug in 9 here. 5 minus 9 absolute value, negative 4 absolute value is 4. Notice that this does not change to plus. The absolute value only acts on one number at a time. So only when it gets down to the very end does the absolute value do anything. Okay? All right. For all m and n, this equals what? So we're going to have to do a double distribute here, also known as FOIL. So 3m times m squared is 3m to the third, right? The exponents add for the m's. Then the outer here would be minus 3mn. The inner here would be plus nm squared. And the last would be minus n squared. Okay? So it's looking like choice K. Alright, for all x, what does this equal? Alright, so we have to distribute this minus 2. So 13 is going to be minus 2x, and it's going to be minus 10. So 13 minus 10 is 3. 3 minus 2x. Minus 2x plus 3 is the same thing, it's just switched around. Okay. N to the 7th to the 11th. So this is a multiplication of exponents. Right? Rule 3 of our exponent rules. What is the 217th digit after the decimal point in the repeating decimal this? Okay. So this is a patterns question. So the first thing is to do is to figure out the length of the pattern. So in this case the length of the pattern is 4. So we want to take that and divide it into 217 and find the remainder. So we don't really care about how many times it goes in. We care more about the remainder. So in this case 216 is a multiple of 4. So it would be a remainder of 1. Okay. So the remainder of 1 tells us that we'll end at the first digit, which is 3. If we had remainder 2, it would be second, remainder 3 would be the third, and then remainder 0 would be the fourth, because we can't get a remainder 4 if we're dividing by 4. The perimeter of a square is 48. P equals 48. What is its area? Area equals question mark. Okay. So first of all, we're dealing with a square, so we have formulas for perimeter and for area. The perimeter of a square is 4 times the side length. The area is side length squared. So I know that 4s is equal to 48. So I could solve for s. S would equal 12. Then I could substitute that into here. 12 squared is the area, so that's 144. What is the product of two solutions of this equation? Okay, so one way to do it is to solve it out. So I would do trinomial factoring here. Bring this plus sign down to this position. The minus indicates that both signs are different, so this would be minus if that was already plus. Then I find factors that multiply to 21, so 1 and 21, 3 and 7. That's about it. And I'm hoping that some of them have a difference or sum of 3, which doesn't seem to be the case. So this is not factorable by conventional standard methods. So I may have to use a quadratic formula or solve it in my calculator. But if I remember the shortcut, that would be very beneficial here. So we have the sum and difference formulas. The sum is negative b over a, and the product is c over a. So the product, so let's see, a, b, c. So a would be the coefficient here, would be 1, b would be 3, c is negative 21. So we're looking here for the product, so we do c over a, negative 21 over 1, that's choice B. Which of the following expressions is a polynomial factor of this? So we take this and we factor it. So our methods of factoring again are GCF, dots, means difference of two squares, and trinomial. So GCF stands for greatest common factor. There is none. Dots, difference of two squares, so this is a difference, and they are both perfect squares. So we take their square roots. So the easy one is just 4 and 4. It's always going to be plus or minus. Then the square root of a to the 16th. So square root is also known as 1/2 power. So 16 times 1/2 is 8. Okay, so this is a to the 8th. Now from here, this is another difference of two squares. So this one can also be factored down. It would be a to the 4th plus 2, a to the 4th minus 2. And then, okay, so this is one of your three factors. A to the 4th minus 2, a to the 4th plus 2 is the one that appears here. Okay, so these would be the three factors. When n equals 1/4, what is the value of this? Okay, so we have to divide this by 1/4, which means the same thing as multiplying it by 4. So we can sort of keep change flip on this. So 4 times 2n minus 5, so that's going to be 8n minus 20. Oh, and then I have to plug in 1/4 again over here. So 8 times 1/4 is 2. 2 minus 20 is negative 18. A proofreader can read 40 pages per hour. How many pages, so in 1 hour, how many pages can they do in 90 minutes, which is really 1.5 hours? Right? If you didn't know that, you can convert 90 minutes, use the conversion factor of 60 minutes, corresponds to 1 hour. So using dimensional analysis, these will cancel out, and we get 90 over 60 hours. These divide. 3 times 3, 3 times 2. The 3's cancel. You get 3/2 of an hour, also known as 1.5. Okay? So from here, you can just move this 1.5 to here, and you could drop the units at this point. It's not that important. Just the setup is important. Okay? So x is 1.5 times 40. So it's 40 plus half of 40. Alright? If you distribute this 40 into here. So it's 40 plus 20, which is 60. That's going to be choice G. By the way, this is a direct proportion, but if it was an inverse proportion, then we would have had to set it up with this formula, where we multiply instead of divide. Okay? That's if one variable increases, the other decreases. The area of the parallelogram may be found by multiplying the base by the height. What is the area of the parallelogram below? So there's a missing side here. It's a right triangle. So it's a 3 blank 5. It's good 3, 4, 5. So that's our height. Notice we don't want the slant height. We want the vertical that's perpendicular to the base. Now, if this is 9 and then this is 3, right? Then their total base would probably equal 12. No, my mistake. It would be equivalent to the 9 that's there. So now the area would equal base times height. So it would be 9 times 4, which is 36. For a certain quadratic equation, we have this equaling 0. The two solutions are this and this. Which of the following could be factors? Okay. So we have x equals 3/4 and x equals negative 2/5 as our factors. Okay. Now, what we want to do is we want to kind of go backwards here and get x minus something, so to speak. Okay. Usually it'll be something like this, and then x plus 2/5. Okay. And then if you FOIL these out, you should get something with this, right? But if you notice that neither of those are choices, okay? So there may be a different way we could do it. Well, the different way is this. Instead of sort of subtracting, you could also multiply by 4. You'll get 4x equals 3, and then 4x minus 3 equals 0. Here you would get 5x equals negative 2, and then 5x plus 2 equals 0. So your two factors are 4x minus 3 and 5x plus 2. Choice F. All sides of a rhombus are the same length as shown below. One diagonal is 12 inches long. The other is 32. Okay, so that would make it 16 and 16, and that would make it 6 and 6, right? How many inches long to the nearest hundredth of an inch is the side of a rhombus? Okay, so one way to do this is, we know that rhombus has a special property where the diagonals both intersect each other and they're perpendicular. So they're perpendicular bisectors of each other. The reason why that helps is because now we have a right triangle here. So we have 6 and we have 16, and we're looking for this third side here. So we use Pythagorean Theorem. Okay. At first glance, it doesn't seem like it's going to be a perfect Pythagorean triple, so we actually can calculate it out. So 256 plus 36. That looks like it's going to be 292. So radical 292. So at this point, you can reach for your calculator. If you kind of know most of your radicals, you can see that this is going to be close to 17 squared, which I believe is like 289 or something to that effect. So yeah. A rectangular parking lot that is 3 feet longer than it is wide. So the length is 3 more than the width, right? Has an area of 550. So area is length times width. That's going to equal 550. How many feet long is the parking lot? So we're going to use substitution method, where we take this and plug it in for L. So 3 plus W times W is 550. Distribute this W, we get 3W along with W squared equals 550. Then we subtract the 550 to the other side, so it becomes minus 550 equals 0. And then we factor it from here trinomially. So W and W, bring down the plus. This minus indicates the signs are different, so that's going to be minus. We now want to factor 550 and hope that we get a difference of 3. So, 1 and 550, 2 and something like that. And then eventually we'll get to like 10 and 55, right? And then notice that 55 has got an 11 in it, so we have 10, 5, and 11. And this 10 is really 2 times 5, right? And then these 5s put together is 25, and this is 22. So these would also build up to be the 550, and they have a difference of 3. So 25 goes first, because the bigger number always goes first. Then we split it, and we get negative 25 and 22. Alright, so if you had trouble with factoring this, we can also use the calculator to find the roots via y equals, okay? In the standard xy coordinate plane, what is the slope of the line joining the points this and this? So we want to find the slope. That's going to be change in y over change in x. So the change in y goes from 7 to negative 8. So it crosses 0, so it means we have to add the absolute values. So that gives us 15. And it went downwards, going this way, so that's minus. Then we went from 3 to 4, so that's plus 1. So negative 15 over 1 is just negative 15. Which of the following is the solution set of this? So we subtract 2 from both sides. We get x is greater than negative 6, which is choice G. What is the center of the circle with this? Okay, so the center is just going to be the opposite of these guys. So the x value is going to be 3. The y value is going to be negative 3. Okay. In the standard xy coordinate plane, what is the length of the line segment that has these endpoints? So we're looking at distance here. And remember, d squared is delta x squared plus delta y squared. So let's find delta x first. We're going from -3 to 5, so we're crossing 0, so we add the absolute values. So delta x is going to equal 3 and 5 is 8, right? Now delta y is going from 4 to -6, so it also crosses, and it's going to equal 10. So we've got to do 8 squared and 10 squared, and then square root. So 64 and 100 and square root. So radical 164. Now we might be able to factor this down into 4 times 41, and then it's going to be 2 rad 41, which is choice G. A triangle has side lengths of this and this, which of the following cannot be the length of the third side. So this is getting at the triangle inequality. So let's say, for argument's sake, we had 5 and 7, and we wanted to figure out this. It can be anywhere between the sum and difference. So the sum is 12, and the difference is 2. So the possible values for the third side would be anywhere between 2 and 12. But those aren't our numbers, so let's use the numbers that are given. 9 and 4.7. So the sum of those is 13.7. So already I know I can't be this, but the difference is 4.3. So we can be anywhere in between these values. Okay, 14 is too high. Which of the following must be true about this? Well, here we see that we are going to have to subtract the exponents. That's rule 2 of our exponent rules. Then we can simply set the exponents equal. So that's answer choice G. In the standard xy coordinate plane, what is the y-intercept of the line given by this equation? Okay, so we want to get it to be y equals, so we're going to swing this 3x to the other side, making it minus 3x. Then we divide by 5 on each and every piece, and we identify this to be the y-intercept. There are 16 ounces in 1 pound. Okay, this is how I write my conversion factors. If 3.4 pounds of beef cost $4.95, so that's $4.95 for 3.4 pounds. What is the cost per ounce? So how many dollars per ounce? That's what they want to know. So we have to somehow put these together in order to get dollars per ounce. Well, let's start with the thing that's in the numerator, which would be using this one. So this is dollars per 3.4 pounds. Now we have to get rid of pounds, so we're going to need to use this guy. Okay, so we would have to write it upside down, where the 1 pounds will be on the top, 16 ounces on bottom. The pounds will cancel out. The unit we'll have is dollars per ounce. So we'll just have to get those numbers in there. And since we haven't been using the calculator, let's try to keep it that way. So 5 over 3.4 times 16. So I estimated it up to 5, and I'm going to estimate this one to 15, and this to 3.5. So it will still be close enough. And then 3.5 is really 7 halves, so 7 over 2. And if you don't understand this part, it's okay. You could just use your calculator. 5 over 15, you get a 3 on the bottom. So it's looking like I'm getting about 2 over 21, which is approximately 2 over 20, right? So this is 2 over 2 times 10. 2's cancel. So I'm getting about 1 over 10, which is 0.1. Yeah, and the closest to 0.1 is just F. And since these are relatively far apart from each other, that type of approximating is not going to cost me. Okay, so 1/2 squared is 1/4. 1/3 squared is 1/9. 1/4 squared is 1/16. So now we get to use the, well, first of all, I would do 4 over 4 here. Alright, that'll give me 4 over 16. And then I would add the 1 over 16 to get 5 over 16. Okay, add that with 1/9. Now I can use my cross multiply method. So 5 times 9 is 45. Then I write the symbol in the middle plus. I do the other cross multiply. 1 and 16 is 16. Then I multiply the denominators. 16 times 9. So I'm going to end up with, let's see, add 20, subtract 4. So we get 65 minus 4, 61. over, and what's 16 times 9? It would be 160 minus 16, right? So take away 20, add back 4, so 144. That's choice C. All right, one route along flat terrain from Hermansville to Melville is to drive straight north 120 miles, and then to drive west for 80 miles. Okay. If a straight road existed, how long would it be? So we need to figure out this distance here. All right, so this might be a Pythagorean triple. It's worth checking. 8, 12, yeah, maybe not. Would it be? Let's see. Maybe not. So we'd have to do 80 squared plus 120 squared square root. So in the calculator it would be super easy, but since we haven't been using it, let's try to keep it that way. 8 times 10 squared plus 12 times 10 squared. So then we can square each separately. So 64 times 100 plus 144 times 100 square root. Then we could factor out the 100. So we would get 64 plus 144. So that would be 208. Right, so rad 100, rad 208, so 10 rad 208. And rad 208 is approximately rad 200. So, and rad 200 of course would be rad 2 times rad 100, and rad 100 is just 10, so 10 times 10 times rad 2, so 20 rad 2. Rad 2 is approximately 1.4, so 20 times 1.4, 2 times 1.4 is 2.8 with an extra 0, so 28, right? So somewhere around 28, is that right? I may have messed that up somehow. Alright, so let's just use the calculator. So 80 squared, whoops, 80 squared plus 120 squared equals square root answer equals. Alright, G. In order to clean her aquarium, Stephanie must remove half the water. The tank measures 30 by 16 by 12. 30 by 16 by 12. Length, width, height, and you multiply those together, you get the volume, right? Okay, so let's do that. Since we're using the calculator, may as well just make it easy on ourselves. Times 12. And then what volume of water in cubic inches must she remove? So she wants to remove half of that water. So this is the total amount of water that would be in there. So we divide that by 2, and we get 2880. Right. The bowling league president selects its 4 officers by selecting first the president, vice president, secretary, and the treasurer. If there are 40 bowlers who are eligible, and no member can hold one office, which of the following gives the number of different possible results? All right. So the first step is to choose a president, and there are 40 options for that. Now, once you've chosen your president, you then have to choose your vice president. There's 39 options. Then you choose your secretary. There's 38 options since you have already placed those two. And then there's 37 left for your treasurer. So the answer would be K. This is just a simple application of counting principle, which is logically equivalent to permutations. Okay. The points R and S in the standard coordinate plane are 2 vertices of a triangle, RST, which has a right angle at S. Which of the following could be the third vertex T? So if we want a right angle at S, we need to either go up or down from here. Okay. Now, if we find the equation of the line that governs RS, that will allow us to determine the slope, right? Then we can actually find the negative reciprocal of that and get the slope of this perpendicular line. So, in fact, we don't even need the equation of the line, we just need the slope. So the slope formula is change in y over change in x. So the change in y goes from 2 to 3, that goes up 1. The change in x goes from 2 to 6, that goes up 4. So now we take a negative reciprocal of this, So the reciprocal would give us 4, and then we negate. So we know the slope is going to be negative 4, or you can also think of it as negative 4 over 1. So we can go down 4 and over 1. So we can go down 4 from 3. That gives us a coordinate of negative 1 for y. And we go up 1 for x, and you get 7. So that would be the point 7, negative 1. Maybe that would be somewhere over here. That is not a choice, right? So then we could consider going the other direction. So instead of negative 4 over 1, we could think of it as 4 over negative 1. So in other words, we go up 4 and to the left 1. So from 3 we go up 4, that gives us 7. We go to the left 1, that gives us 5. 5 comma 7 is a choice. What value of x would satisfy this equation? Okay, so what I'd do here is I would distribute this 0.2. So I'd get 0.2x equals, and then this would be 5400 and move the decimal in 1, so 540, and oh, this should be a minus, equals x. Then I realize that this is 1x and this is 0.2. 1 minus 0.2 is going to be 0.8. So this is equal to 0.8x. Then I have to divide by 0.8. Okay, and let's see. That's going to give a number bigger than 540, right? And it's going to be negative. So it's got to be this. Alright, so this tells me that I'm in the first quadrant. So we draw a reference triangle, and here's our angle. The tangent is 15 over 8. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. So opposite over adjacent. We want to know the cosine, so we're going to need the hypotenuse. So we have to use Pythagorean Theorem. So we do this, 64, 225. So when we add these together, we end up with 289. And the square root of 289 is 17. Okay? So now when we're doing our cosine, which is adjacent over hypotenuse, we have adjacent, we have hypotenuse, so we get answer choice A. A square pool with an area equal to 81 is to be placed entirely in a circular enclosure. Alright, so we have a circular enclosure, and then here's our square pool. Okay. Tiles will be laid within the enclosure. Okay, so we have some tiling here. So basically we're going to have to subtract the areas of the circle and the area of the square. What is the approximate area of the enclosure? Okay, they want to know the area of the tile. So the thing that connects these shapes is this diagonal here. Okay, it's the diameter of the circle, and it's also the diagonal of the square. So let's figure out what that diagonal would be. Well, we know that since the area is equal to side squared, we can square root both sides, and we get side length equals 9. Then if we studied our 45, 45, 90 triangles, we know that this would be 9 radical 2, right? X rad 2 is the ratio of sides for a 45, 45, 90. If you haven't studied that, you can also do Pythagorean Theorem. But anyway, we know now that this is 9 radical 2, which we can figure out as a decimal if we need to. But the radius is simply going to be 4.5 times radical 2, half of the measurement of the diameter. So this is our radius. Now if we want to find the area of the circle, we need pi r squared. So that's pi times 4.5 rad 2 quantity squared. So we have to square both items inside. The 4.5 squared, there's a trick. It would be 20.25. The rad 2 squared would be 2. So double this and you get 40.5 times pi. So that will be our area. At this point you can realize that pi is approximately 3. So it's 40 times 3, which is approximately 120. It's a lower estimate. So this would be the area of the circle. And then we have to then subtract the area of the square, which is 81. So that gives us approximately 40. Chances are it's going to be F. Now, if you want to be more accurate, of course, you can use your calculator to do 40.5 times pi. We definitely got a low estimate here. 40.5 times pi, and that's going to equal 127, and then minus the 81 for the other area. That'll give us 46. So how come this is coming out wrong? Huh? Let's see. Alright, so at this point, sometimes it's best to start over instead of trying to find the mistakes. And sometimes it's best to just move on to the next question. But anyway, let's read it again. So a square pool with an area of 81 is to be placed entirely within a circular enclosure with a radius, okay, this is the part I missed. Radius of 10 feet, okay? So this is going to be sort of inside of here, okay, with a 9 by 9. So this area here is 81, right? And then the outer area is 100 times pi, because it's going to be, with a radius of 10, it would be pi r squared, so pi times 10 squared. So the other area is going to be 100 pi. So we have to do 100 pi minus 81. So grab the calculator, 100 times pi, and then subtract 81, so we get 233. In the standard xy coordinate plane, which of the following lines goes through this point and is parallel to this? Okay, so whenever you see parallel, you should think same slope. So we know that m is going to equal 2, just like it does there. Right away we could eliminate 2 of these choices. So if that's as far as you can get, at least you've gotten some progress, okay? But then the next thing to think of after m equals 2 is that you need this for x and y. So now you can actually sort of see which one of these works, or you can use your y equals mx plus b, alright, and plug in these 3 and find b, right? So 4 equals 2 times 3 plus b, 6 plus b, subtract 6, you get negative 2 equals b. So it's going to be choice B, where it has the minus 2 as the y-intercept. In the figure below, tan theta equals. Okay, so we want this to be a reference triangle here. Okay, and so the measurement of this point is 3, 3, and this is 0, 0. So that means it has to be over by 3 and up by 3 from there, right? Now, the tangent of theta is toa, right? Sohcahtoa, opposite over adjacent. So opposite is this side, adjacent is this side. So it's simply going to be 3 over 3, which is 1. Which of the following operations will produce the smallest result when substituted for the blank in the expression? So with this, you can just use your calculator. It'll probably be the fastest way. So we'll do 2/3 plus negative 3. We'll do 2/3 minus negative 3. Alright, so we want the smallest result. So far, b is out. Alright, we'll do 2/3 times negative 3. Alright, that's not quite as low as the first one, so that's out. We'll do 2/3 divided by negative 3. That's still not as low as the first one. Okay, and then we'll do 2/3 average with negative 3, so that means I have to add negative 3, get an answer, and then divide by 2. Not as low as the first one, right? So it's going to be plus the value of b that will make this true. So let's write it correctly with no middles here, okay? So we have to solve this thing. So I could start by subtracting 2, or I can multiply through by 3. That might be a little bit wiser. But anyway, subtracting 2 works also. So subtract 2 from 1/4. So you can use your calculator. Do 1/4 minus 2. You get negative 1.75. Okay. Then you have to multiply by 3 on both sides. So you do times 3. Okay, you get negative 5.25. So that's between negative 4 and negative 6. what is the solution set of this? Right? So the first thing that we consider is when you have this absolute value situation, you need to branch it into two different problems. The first problem is exactly identical to the original, just without the bars. The second problem, the side with the bars stays exactly the same, but you have to switch the inequality sign along with the sign of the right hand side. So we get this. And then we just have to solve both. Okay, so we end up here with -5. Divide and you get this. Okay, so we can already start eliminating if we wanted to, but let's continue. So here we get 9, divide, and you get a less than or equal to 3. Okay, so let's see, this looks like an OR statement, right? So it's either you're less than or equal to 3. Oh, it's actually an AND statement. So you're in between of here, right? So if I wrote these in order, it would be -5/3, then comes a, then comes 3, right? So that is this one. By the way, less than signs arrange things in order from left to right, or smallest to greatest, which is what mathematicians prefer over greater than. When measured from a point on the ground that is a certain distance from the base of a cell phone tower, the angle of elevation to the top of the tower is 41 degrees. The height of the cell phone tower is 200 feet. What is the distance? Okay, so this is just a simple Sohcahtoa. So in this case, we would label all three sides. This would be opposite, this would be adjacent, this would be hypotenuse. Hypotenuse is irrelevant here. We know the value of opposite, and we want to know the value of adjacent. So we're going to use tangent. So tangent of 41 equals opposite over adjacent. We'll call it x. Now we have to solve for x, so we do that by moving the x this direction, diagonally across the equal sign. Then we move the tangent of 41 diagonally to the bottom of the other side. So effectively they switch places. And so this is not a choice. However, we realize that tangent of 41 on the bottom, right, is really the same thing as a cotangent on the top, because cotangent is really equal to 1 over tangent, right? So it's the flip of tangent. Choice K. For the area of a square to triple, the new side lengths must be multiplied by what? So we want the area to become 3 times of the area. The question is, the side length has to become what times the original side length? So this is a proportionality question. So we have to look at the formula for area, which is side squared. So the relationship here is what is called a direct squared relationship. The way that works is whatever change I affect on the input variable, that change is going to get squared and affect the output variable. So for example, if I was to change side length to 3 times the side length, then the area would change to, well, if I plug in 3s for this, that 3s then gets squared, so it becomes 9s squared, right? Because the squared applies to both. So the area gets multiplied by 9. So you see, any slight change that I affect here is going to get squared in the output. Okay. So if I want the output to be tripled, I should multiply this by radical 3. Okay? Because that radical 3 would then get squared and become a full 3. Right, the volume of a cube is given by the formula side cubed. Okay? If a cube has a volume of 64, so right away we can find that the side length, by taking a 1/3 power of both sides, we get side length is equal to 4. And the length of each side is halved. So now we're going to take the side length and half it to 2. The new cube's volume would be, so the volume is side cubed, so it's 2 cubed, which is 8. So that's h. We actually didn't even need to use numbers here if we notice that the proportionality is direct cubed, right, then a halving would become half cubed, which is 1/8. 1/8 of 64 is equal to 8, right? In the parallelogram below, lengths are given in inches. What is the area of a parallelogram? So the area is base times height, where this height is not slant height, it's actually the direct perpendicular to the base. So we have 7 for the base and 9 for the height. That multiplies to 63. Alright, so here we have 8, a to the 6th, b to the 3rd is less than 0, which of the following cannot be true. Okay, so less than 0 is another way to say it is negative. Okay, so this thing is negative. So what is causing it to be negative? Well, it's not the 8, right? Now, if a was negative, when we raise it to an even power, that kills any negativity. So the a is not what's causing it to be negative. So it must be this. It must be the case that b itself is negative. Then when I cube b, it'll still remain negative. So I know from this stuff that b must be less than 0. So it cannot be true that b is greater than 0. Alright, so next one. Log base 4 of x equals 3. What is x, right? So there's a few ways you could do this. One way is to change it into an exponential. I like to use my left, right, center method. So I take the leftmost item, then I take the rightmost item, and that's going to equal the center item. So 4 to the 3rd equals x, so I just multiply 4 times 4 times 4, and I get 64. System of two linear equations of two variables has no solution, and one of the equations is graphed. Which of the following could be the equation of the other line? So the other line would have to be something like this, which is parallel, because no solution means no intersection point. Okay, so if we were to be able to determine the slope of the original line, we would know that the other one would have to have the same slope. Okay, so slope formula is change in y over change in x. The change in y is that it went up 4. Okay, and the x went up 3. So we know we're looking for a 4/3 slope, so the only one that has that is j. In a game, 80 marbles are numbered from 0 through 79 are placed in a box. A player draws one marble at random from the box without replacing the first marble. The player draws a second marble at random. If both marbles drawn have the same ones digit, the player is a winner. If the marble drawn is number 35, what is the probability the player will be a winner on the next draw? Okay, so the only way to be a winner is to draw another marble which has a 5 at the end, right? Because you need the units digit to be the same. So let's take a look and see which marbles would cause us to win the game. Now, we're not replacing the marble. So the 35 is now not any longer in the bag. So the only ones that are in the bag that would lead to a win are these ones. So let's count them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there's 7 marbles that would lead to a win. So now the question is, how many marbles are left in the bag? Well, originally there was 80 marbles, right? We already drew 1, so there's 79 left. Answer choice C. In the standard xy coordinate plane, what is the equation of the line that passes through the origin, that is 0, 0, and the point 3, 4? Okay, so here this is really telling us that the y-intercept is 0. Y equals mx plus b, so the b part is 0, so it just looks like y equals mx. So already we can cross out 3 choices. Now we just need a slope, right? Slope is change in y, which is 4, over change in x, which is 3. So our answer is H. The measure of a vertex angle of an isosceles triangle is a plus 30. The base angles each measure 2a minus 15. What is the measure in degrees of one of these base angles? So the trick here is that these all three have to add up to 180, right? Plus 2a minus 15 plus a plus 30 has to equal up to 180. So now I just do my like terms. I've got 5 a's, right? And then minus 30 plus 30, this cancels out. So 5 a's is 180. That means a is 36. So now they want to know the measure of the base angle, so I'm going to plug the 36 in here. So I get 72 minus 15. So I can take away 20 and add back 5. So I get 52 and then 57. What is the smallest possible value for the product of two integers that differ by 7? So I know I have two integers, let's call them x and y. And I know that they differ by 7, so that x minus y equals 7. So you can start doing sort of systems of equations, but perhaps the better option would be to use the concept of just plugging in numbers, right? So let's think of two numbers that differ by 7. 1 and 8, maybe? What would be their product? Their product would be 8, right? So I found a way to get 8. So far, I'm at choice F. Now, is there anything telling me I need to use positive numbers? Not really, right? So can I use 0 and 7? Well, their product would be 0, right? So now I found a way to get 0, so I can eliminate choice F. And is there anything telling me I can't use negatives? I don't see it. So I can use -1 along with 6, right? If you think about the number line, -1 to 6, that differs by 7, right? 1 and 6. So their product is -6. So I can now eliminate this. And then I can continue along this track, making it -2, 5. That equals -10. And then -3, 4. That would equal -12. And that's about as good as I can do. Alright, 3 distinct lines all contained within a plane. Separate that plane into distinct regions. So whenever we're talking about a plane, usually it's like a flat sheet of paper. But it's infinite, right? So we need to draw 3 separate lines to divide it up. So let's say we draw these 3 lines, okay? What are all the possible number of distinct regions of the plane that could be separated by any such 3 lines? Okay, so this separates the plane into 4 distinct regions. So anything that doesn't have 4 has to be eliminated. Okay, now I need to try a different configuration. So maybe this one cuts across and here, right? So how many regions is that? About 6, right? So anything that doesn't have 6 has to go, which is this guy. So that brings us down to 2 choices. Alright, so now at this point is where it really gets a little tricky. So it's kind of hard to think about how to get this last one. But we expect to see it be either 5 or 7. Okay? Well, here's the idea. So anytime I draw a line, right, my next line I can choose to be either parallel to it or intersect. Alright, so we've already explored parallel. Let's do another parallel, and this time we intersect like this. There will still be 6. No good. So what if we intersect it? Now, with our third line, so far we've drawn it such that it intersects both at the same point. But what if we draw it such that it intersects both at different points? Then we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 regions. So our answer is choice A. Given the vertices of parallelogram in the standard coordinate plane below, what is the area of triangle QRS in square units? Okay, so we want an area of the triangle QRS, right? It's this one here. So area is base times height, and these have to be perpendicular to one another, right? So the base is easy enough. We can just use this top side here. And notice how the y coordinates are the same. So the length of this segment only has to do with the difference of the x coordinates, which would happen to be 6, right? Now, to get the height, remember we do not want a slant height. We want a direct vertical height between these two coordinates. So we can look at the difference of the y coordinates here. and that'll get us this vertical. Okay, so if you notice, it's a difference of 8. So our height is 8 and our base is 6. So, and since we're doing a triangle, we have to do 1/2 base height, right? So half of 6 is 3 times 8 is 24. The first and second terms of a geometric sequence are A and AB. What is the 643rd term? Okay. So a geometric sequence, you can recall, is a sequence that multiplies by something every single time, the same thing. So that item must be B in this case, right? So to go from A to AB, you had to multiply by B, right? So then we'd have to times it by another B, and that would give us A times B squared. And then it would be A times B to the third, etc. So eventually you'll get A times B to a really big number, right? So I think that the best choice would be E. Points A, B, and C are 3 distinct points that lie on the same line. Okay, so A, B, C, let's say. If the length of AB is 19 and the length of BC is 13, then what are the possible lengths in meters for AC? Well, AC can certainly be the sum of those two, which would be, I believe, 32, right? So anything that doesn't have 32 can be eliminated. So now the question is, can I get 6? And interestingly enough, the answer is yes. Okay, it doesn't say that I have to be in this order. So I could be in a different order. For example, I can have my points be A, C, B. In which case, if AB is 19 and then BC is 13, that would mean that AC, right, the difference would have to be 8. Oh, sorry, not 8, 6. So the answer is H.